Hey, Woz,
Yes, Nick.
what do you call a guy with a rubber toe?
I kind of wish I knew the answer, but I kind of hope I don't.
Roberto.
Welcome to the Tradies in Business podcast with your hosts Warwick Bidwell and Nicole Cox. Divert your phone and grab a brew as Woz and Nick unpack tips, tales, secrets and stuff-ups from guests both inside and outside your trade, helping educate and inspire you to break the cycle of gut-busting and money stress and create a true trade business.
Dear, oh dear. Hello, listeners. Welcome to another episode and another Nicole joke.
Well, that one was sent to me by a listener. So, listeners,
Ooh.
I appreciate that you enjoy my jokes that much. You're making suggestions to improve them. Thank you.
I think we did a survey recently, Nicole, on your jokes and the podcast.
It's
and
overwhelmingly positive.
There's some fairly positive feedback about your jokes, but I'm still convinced that it's just, people like to raise you up in order to lower me down a little bit. Just take me down a peg, which is probably deserved, I think.
Maybe, perhaps.
All right.
Yeah,
so listeners,
like one of my sons told me his favourite joke. He said, "What is brown and sticky?" Stick. The standards of humour in our family aren't that great.
I like that one. I do like that.
So our guest has just chimed in as well. This is how good the Joke Fest is. I'm just going to jump straight in, listeners, and let you know who we've got here in the virtual Tradies in Business studio. Jim Penman, welcome to the show, mate.
Yeah, good to be here.
I should say welcome back to the show. Now, you were on the podcast when it had a different name and a different incarnation quite a few years ago now. So I'm keen to have another chat with you along with Coxie here. And I guess just get your perspective. For those who don't know who Jim Penman is, maybe you should tell our listeners, mate, just give them a quick rundown and educate them, because I think they should know, but perhaps.
Well, it's Jim's group, Jim's mowing, Jim's cleaning, Jim's antennas and the rest. Started off as a one-man part-time student lawn mowing business back in 1975, and it's got a bit bigger since then.
Just a tiny bit, Jim.
Just a bit bigger, yeah. So I think a few people just went, so this is Jim from Jim's.
Yeah, that's right.
Which I'm sure you've never had before, Jim. Just a couple times.
Yeah, well.
Jim, are you or is the Jim's franchise or the Jim's, or is it a corporation company? Is it just based in Australia, or have you branched out into other countries now as well?
Well, we've got about just under 400 in New Zealand, and there's a few in Canada. So
okay, fantastic.
Mostly Australia and New Zealand.
So a bit of a shift in direction from the one-man lawn mowing company all the way through to what you're doing now. That's a lot of lessons, a lot of learning to be done along the way around business.
Yeah, but the thing I always say, Nicole, is that it's not really one big thing. People make the mistake. They think, hey, suddenly somebody's mowing a lawn and think, what do I franchise? And suddenly they're a multi-millionaire. It's thousands and thousands of little everyday decisions. Every day of my life, how do I do this better? Now, whether it's shaving off a few seconds, half a second going around a tree, or how to make franchisees want to stay with us longer, or whatever it is always looking at what you do. And it's just surprising, if you make tiny changes and keep on making them, you end up with something surprisingly more than what you started with.
Absolutely. How's that for a clanger straight up in the first 5 minutes of the show? That's fantastic. It is so true. It's something we often say here, actually. It's those little changes that make incremental big change. And I often feel, and I feel there's a real risk, particularly in Australia, we do this well, the whole overnight success. And I don't think it's often thought about the journey to get to that overnight success. Often it's 10, 15, 20 years in the making to have that moment where it seems to all click. Jim, I wonder, in those early days, what were the first kinds of changes or improvements you were looking to make that really started you on this journey that you've been on?
Well, I had an aim to do an extremely great job and to do it in the best possible time. So those are the two big focuses. For example, I was one of the first contractors in Australia to have a brush cutter. And it came about because I was very frustrated. I want to make a job perfect. And when you're mowing lawns, the hardest job to get right is the edges.
Yeah.
So I could do the edges, along the concrete parts with a wheel. That was good. And I could clean it up with my mower, the left-hand side of the mower, suck the grass off, but I couldn't get around the trees and the clotheslines and stuff. And it used to frustrate me. Nobody ever asked, but it used to frustrate me. And you couldn't do it commercially. It was not possible to do that kind of stuff. So when I went into my mower shop one day and I saw this gadget sitting in the corner of the shop, I asked what it was, and he explained what it was. And it was just new from Japan. It was Shikatani, one of the first in the country.
Wow.
I bought it on the spot because I had that problem. And I would go out and I would do lawns, and people would say things to me like, I never knew my lawn could look that good. I just do everything. Everything was perfect. If there was a little tiny bit of grass, like a marble, the other side of the front lawn, I'd pick it up and chuck it into the garden. It had to be perfect. And I always wanted it up on time. So I had this unreasonable obsession with making my customers into raving fans. And it's just surprisingly easy to get customers if you do that.
It's been a big focus of our conversations recently, customer-centric businesses that are looking to improve that customer experience do tend to do super well. It's not hard to create a raving fan, particularly in the trades, I think, because so many people aren't making that the focus.
The standard of competition is very poor in a lot of times. It's surprisingly bad. And people get wrong. They think that you've got to focus on marketing. You do need some marketing, but service is far, far more important. Like one of the best things we ever did in Jim's as a franchise system is put in a customer survey system. And we started doing that about a decade ago, and gradually ramped up the level of service. The level of complaints actually dropped down to a fraction of what they were because we asked clients directly and put all the processes in place and warning letters and counselling and all the rest of it. And a really surprising thing happened when we started doing that is the level of leads started to rise dramatically. In the past, I used to have people knocking on doors to find work for my mowing contractors. These days, we get hundreds of thousands of unserviced leads a year. It's an increasing problem. So just amaze customers, and it's quite striking how quickly your business builds. And not only just builds with numbers of customers, with good customers who don't mind paying you well.
I can recall as a consumer, it's about 15 years ago now, making a really firm decision that I would shop for service, not for price. And that's in all aspects of my life, right down to where I go for my groceries or my meat. I'm looking for a particular level of service rather than price. And that was about creating better outcomes for me as the consumer. And it has undoubtedly changed the way I enjoy most of the experiences that I have with the businesses that I do deal with. And I think it's a great lesson that trade business owners can take, is concentrating on the outcome for the customer will increase then the way they're talking about your business, which naturally increase the lead flow. It's a really quick solution in what is quite a competitive market. And I feel like over the last couple of years, with the changes that we've all seen, we've been very fortunate as tradies to mostly continue to work. And now we're seeing a bit of a drop off, slowly, albeit, but the inquiries aren't coming through like they have. There's a quick way to make a change to that for your business, and that's through concentrating on that experience that you provide the customer, so that they are then raving about you and your business to all and sundry, and suddenly they're making calls. It's a very quick change to make. Jim, how did you, I had an experience recently, and I was at a car show of all things, and in came a Jim's franchisee, and he was a Jim's Jumping Castles, I think it was, or Jim's.
Yeah, Jumping Castles is the new one, yes.
Is that what it is? Yeah. How on earth, what's the process look like to create a business model that can be applied to various business models? So the overarching, I guess, franchise model must be similar for all of the businesses that it's then able to be applied to, from mowing to dog washing to jumping castles, etc. How do you create that kind of model so that it can be reapplied?
Well, it's obvious in a way, because most of what we do is actually to do with business rather than the technicalities. Learning how to mow a lawn or clean a bathroom floor or even do a pest is relatively minor. What really counts is business skills. And we have a system of software and stuff. We spend about $5 million a year on software development. So it's a huge thing for us, which actually apportions jobs in a certain way. So when a customer rings up, we might have 20 franchisees in the area and maybe only one's taking work or taking that particular service. So we know exactly who to give it to. So there's all this technology, which is common to, it doesn't matter what you do. Customer service, all those principles are the same. So it's, in a way, it's fairly obvious. What wasn't obvious in the beginning was that the same brand could cover it. So when I first started thinking, well, it applies to mowing, what about cleaning? And I thought, well, hang on a bit. Mowing is this guy with the beard and the hat, which was what I looked like. It's taken directly from photos of me. Okay. Now, if you were going to do cleaning, nobody would want a guy with a beard and a hat because that's a gardener. And it was also a man. So obviously that wouldn't work. So let's try something else. So I started this little brand called Sunlight, Sunlite, with little sprays and stuff. So that's a very friendly, clean, woman-friendly sort of thing. Women wouldn't mind wearing that. And we tried it, signed a couple of franchisees, couldn't find them work, gave them their money back. And then somebody came to me later and said, what about Jim's Cleaning? And I said, well, no, not Jim's Cleaning, because Jim's is obviously a mowing brand. This is a mowing contractor. That's the hat I used to wear when I was mowing lawns, because I, protect my head and if you're going under branches and stuff, it doesn't get knocked off. So it's a mowing, it's a man's thing. They said, no, we think Jim's Cleaning would work. And I said, no, it won't. Can't possibly work. So they said, we're so convinced it'll work that we'll give it a try. We'll do it under kind of a license to you guys. So I said, all right, well, have a go. And it worked. So that was just surprising. And it's a funny thing that a mowing brand actually does extend. But what happens increasingly these days, of course, is people use more than one service. It's very common that you see somebody who's got a service and you look up and they've looked at 4 or 5 other different services in the past, which actually makes a lot of difference too, because if we see somebody who's used us a number of times, they're an A-grade customer, and we tend to take them really, really seriously. One of the things that my job actually is, if a customer complains about a problem with the job more than once, they send it directly to me as the CEO of the company, which is, people find surprising, but I do that. And one of the things I will do is I'll look up what jobs they've given us in the past. And if they've been a good client, then we take them, give them a bit of extra care and credibility.
Jim, I want to talk about the customer-centric business, and we've talked about raving fans and creating an experience for customers that I guess turns them into our sales and marketing team, really. What about where there's staff involved? Because I see this challenge with our listeners, with our own clients that we work with. There's this mantra that, the customer's first, the customer's is tantamount, and we should be always looking after the customer. But then when we get staff in the mix, who do we take care of first? Because sometimes we have to, not choose, I guess, as business owners, but there's almost like which one is preeminent to the other? So I'd be keen to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, there's a saying we have in gyms, and actually, in fact, when I sent you an email, it was on the bottom of my email. There's a chain. There's a little 3-part saying: our first priority is the welfare of our franchisees. We're also passionate about customers. We sign only franchisees and franchisors we're convinced will succeed. So ultimately, if people come first, and that includes my own staff. My most important people are my franchisees and the people who work for me directly. They're the ones that it's ultimately for. So, when it comes to things like unserviced leads, for example, now it's not good for customers, but I'm not going to ask a franchisee to do a job that's not in their interest to do, because I want to maximize their income first, even if that particular customer gets let down. We have to say no, which is we do a lot, far too much, close to a third of the time, which is unfortunate. Wow. But my franchisees are more important. Also, when it comes to pricing, for example, customers would want a cheap price, but my franchisees want to make good money. So we hit again and again, put your prices up, charge more. If you're knocking back work, add 10% to your quotes. So that's franchisees first. Absolutely. Now, having said that, of course, the way you keep franchisees busy, or, staff in that sense, is by giving fantastic customer service. So there's a lot of pressure in the gym system. And that sometimes leads to a bit of tension because my franchisees are sometimes that you're giving me so much pressure over complaints that I'm having mental health issues. And I say, yes, well, I appreciate that and I feel for you. But at the same time, if I slackened off and some of my franchisees started lacking work and they couldn't feed their families and couldn't pay their mortgages, that will also cause mental health issues too. So in the end, you really have to understand that to be part of Jim's, we want you to be successful. And to do that, you must look after your customers. And again, what I point out to them too is that if you look after your customers, and when you do it on an individual basis, you are far, far more likely to report good income and far less likely to report poor income. Yeah. So one of the things we look at very carefully is attrition rate at gyms. What is your chance of being in business in 12 months after you start? And we know for independents, it's between the chance of being in business after 12 months is around about 5 to 10%. Which is why I have enormous respect for anybody who achieves success as an independent. Now, with us, it's about 88%.
Wow.
We lose about 12% in the first year for all kinds of reasons. But what's interesting is when you look at their survey ratings, whereas the average gym's rating is around 4.7, 4.8 out of a possible 5. People who leave, the average rating is about 4.2. So at every level, whether they're getting work in or whether in surviving as an individual, customer service matters. But still, ultimately, it's all about the people. Yes. And I'd say I put my staff in there too. I got wonderful, wonderful staff at my head office. And you know, we will have no hesitation in firing a customer, refusing to do with him if they don't look after my staff or my people properly, because ultimately they're the most important.
It seems to be, sorry, Coxie, it seems to be a common thread, Jim, amongst quote unquote successful businesses. I think long-term businesses who have created sustainable results is they have a similar ethos to yourself around, I guess in some sense it's balancing the customer obsession with the care and concern for our own people. But ultimately, when we grow a business, and I'm speaking to our listeners who either have staff or are thinking about expanding their trade business to take on staff, staff aren't just tools in a kit bag. You know, they're a team of people that we need to actually nurture and develop and lead and defend. And I see too many businesses that will almost take the word of a customer over their staff, and that's really damaging to the team and the results that they're going to get out of their business long term.
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. We have a rating system actually in gyms, as I mentioned, the survey system and also complaints and stuff, which can be very serious if you get too many. But one of my jobs, personal jobs, is deleting unfair complaints. So if a franchisee can show, I not only tried to ring the customer, but I texted them, which is important. Within the 2 hours that we give them, I would take off the complaint. If they go back to a customer and fix the problem and they can show the customer's happy, I'll remove the complaint. Or if the franchisor gets involved and rings the customer and really recognize the customer as being unfair, unreasonable, they've done the right thing, then I will delete the complaint. So we have to treat people very, very fairly.
Something else that I want to unpack a little bit more is it's a thought that comes up a lot in our conversations with trade business owners, and I think there's an idea perhaps that if I just do a fantastic job of the plumbing, or if I just do that, you know, if I create the perfect lawn for people, that's enough. You know, that should lead me to business success. And I think you kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier as well, Jim. Is there more to it than that? And if so, what else is there other than just being a fantastic plumber or a fantastic tiler?
Well, there's all kinds of things to do with it. First of all, especially in the beginning, you got to market yourself. Established operators can get in a business, but they don't need it. We have franchisees. Most of our franchisees don't take much work, actually, because they're well established in the beginning. So in the beginning, especially, you need to market yourself to find work. It's also very important that you look to your own financial situation. You can have a brilliant franchisee, in our case, who does a great job, but fails because they don't charge enough. And that's a major problem. I actually have a lot We spend a lot more time trying to argue and convince franchisees to charge more than we do with getting them to put their prices down. Now, sometimes when they're very new and they're short of work and then they're getting a lot of knockbacks and stuff, we look at them, hey, let's moderate your pricing. But far more often, I was talking to one franchisee, a 10-year veteran, because I like to ring my veterans on their anniversaries, like 10, 15. Those are special people. And I was speaking to one guy, he's a cleaning franchisee, and his average charge was like $50+ per hour. And he had some clients he was charging like $35 an hour for. Wow. Without trying to be, I said, why do you do that? He's an incredibly brilliant operator. Now, we would recommend at least $60 an hour, at least $1 a minute for any of our people. And this guy's charging below that. And every time he said he had a vacancy, he'd have 5 people wanting to move in. But he just, I love the guy. I mean, he's just great. He just doesn't care about the money, which is okay because he's well off.
Yeah.
But for people who are not quite so affluent, it doesn't make sense to undercharge. So I actually spend a lot of time hitting people about charge what you're worth. And then a minimum $1 a minute is what we tell our people. For extras, more. If you're doing, if you're mowing a lawn, maybe charging $1 a minute is fine. But if you're actually cleaning the gutters, you should be looking at a lot more than that. So that's another problem. It's also efficiency. It's also things like reducing your travel time. It's a matter of having the right equipment properly maintained, especially things like lawn mowing. It's also a matter of how you address and how you speak to clients, whether you make clear what you're going to do. I mean, you can do the best job in the world, but if the client it's not what the client expects, you haven't really done a good job. It's like one of my trees franchisees. He's a brilliant operator. In one case, he was telling me where he was told to given a job to take down this tree, and it was just near the house. And the customer described where it was. So they went and had a look at it, and it was obvious which it was, and he did it. And he did an absolutely brilliant job, absolutely totally professional. It was taken down, the stumps had everything, but it was the wrong tree. So in the end, it wasn't a great success for him.
Oops. You can't exactly put it back.
You give clear written quotes to a customer so they know what you're going to do. If you're doing a vacate clean, you've got to say exactly, precisely what you're going to do.
Yes.
If you're gardening, what am I going to do with the weeds? Am I going to spray them? Am I going to dig them out? Am I going to use a catcher? If not, sometimes it does show a difference. Then, is that clear to the customer? So there's an awful lot more to it than just, and it's also not just about doing a great job. It's also when you do it. We have far more problems with people not turning up or not ringing back than we do with poor job as such. Only about probably 1 in 6 client complaints might be to do with quality of work. So it's more to do with communication.
It's all that human stuff, isn't it? I mean, we joked earlier about social skills and poor jokes as icebreakers as we were going to record this. But I see a lot of business owners struggle more with the people stuff than with the actual job. It's like they did a perfect job of removing the tree, but they just got it wrong as to which tree it was, and that's a communication breakdown. And often not setting expectations clearly with people. And I suspect that's probably, part of the issue with our divorce rates in this country as well, is going into relationships without clear expectations, and then we end up disappointed, or one party does anyway. Yeah. And so that leads to breakdowns.
People are often very deluded on the levels of customer service too. They just don't recognize how bad they are, which is why our system, in a sense, is very hard, because it reflects it back very, very strongly. But you've got people who are getting warning notices, even breach notices, who just don't think they've done anything wrong. And that's the problem. They just can't see. They say, but my customer service is great. I do a great job. And it's true. There's no complaints about the quality of work. But it's just, I'm just not always completely up on these things about calling customers back and so forth. But but you've got to change that. Or they blame the customers, or they make excuses, and they just can't see it. It's hard. You've got to be, I guess, one of the things that I have, I'm endlessly self-critical. I'm always looking at what I'm doing and say, how can I do it better? What mistake did I make? Okay, this went wrong, but no point in blaming somebody else. What could I have done different?
For all of our clients that are listening, that is the perfect demonstration of above and below the line. Please rewind, listen to that again. It's a perfect demonstration of how important it is to take ownership of your own behavior and how you've contributed to any situation.
We divide our franchisees into three basic groups. You've got gold franchisees who are always looking to say, what can I do better? You have what we call bronze franchisees. And the gold franchisee is the kind of person that would succeed even as independent. And they tend to be the leaders and they tend to have workers and become franchisors and stuff. Then you have bronze, which are people that can listen when you actually explain to them. And they will follow along, but probably wouldn't succeed in business for themselves. And then you have lead franchisees. And the lead franchisee is someone who just won't listen. They always blame somebody else. They say, well, no, it's not me not turning customers. It's the fact that you should give me more leads. Or, I should get better support. They will not look at what they do at all. And that's why they tend to fail.
How do you deal with them, Jim? I can imagine that must be an issue for the business model. How do you deal with that kind of behavior or that kind of attitude?
Well, you don't give up easily. As soon as the person signs. If we see any sign at all of that kind of attitude in person who hasn't signed yet, even if they've done full training, we will just say, no, you can't join. Once they join, you have a very strong obligation to help them, and you just try and you try and you try. And in the end, they go through the process and breach notices and all the rest of it. And in the end, we just have to let them go, and they can go and do it independently if they can survive. It's very hard. It's very disappointing. That's one of the why in that little three-part thing I mentioned to you, we sign only franchisees and franchisors we're convinced will succeed, because one of the things that you do, you try really hard to try and pick it up from the beginning. There was one case just recently where a prospective franchisee was just very argumentative and not listening to one of my franchisors, and they were refused to franchise. He said, you can't have it. And then he appealed to me. And I heard the story, and I said to the franchisor, it's the right decision. If they won't listen to you now, they're not going to listen to you when you start and things go wrong, because they'll always want to say, I'm right, you're wrong. And that's not a good attitude for business. The good attitude of business is, what can I do better?
It's a big risk to something as big as what you've created. To, one bad franchisee or franchisor could really be the undoing, I guess. So I guess the key would be that support that you speak about, but also acting swiftly. And it sounds like you've created the procedures and the structure to be able to provide that support and the feedback very quickly so that changes can be made.
Well, actually, I tell you what, by the end of this year, we've got some new software coming out for individual franchisees, which I'm confident that will drop our complaint rate by at least 50%.
Wow.
Putting in processes and systems and instant feedback if a franchisee doesn't actually return a call promptly. The ability for clients to book in jobs directly to the franchisee's diary, those kinds of things. Just trying to get around looking at all the problems we have with complaints. Now, if we can do that, and I'm confident we will see our leads skyrocket because the relatively few cases we have, the small minority cases where things go wrong, would happen much less often.
Jim, clearly you're extremely business-minded, and I'm banking that you've always been this way. How did you learn the business lessons that you're now imparting on your franchisees and franchisors? Look, a lot of it's temperament. I have I suppose I'm a committed Christian, and I have that kind of view that I need to be better as a person. We're very conscious of our own failings before God and our fellow men, so our fellow human beings. So that tendency to look from within and say, what could I do better? Also, things like the way we consider franchisees as we consider ourselves to be servants of the franchisees. They're their primary clients. That comes back to Jesus washing his disciples' feet, that kind of lesson. So there's very fundamental matters of character and attitude that I have. And people sometimes ask me, am I proud of what I've developed? And I said, well, in a sense, yes, but it's good to have nearly 5,000 franchisees. But the thing I'm most proud of is when I see franchisees and franchisors acting in a similar fashion. Like, our franchisors are actually amazing people. They will often argue with us about trying to get their franchisees lower, even though that's their income. Yeah.
And when they want to, sometimes we think they're overly soft sometimes. So, but that attitude of really wanting to serve franchisees and really caring about them being successful, I'm blown away by it. I love it. And when my franchisees help each other, like during the lockdown when it was terrible, and some franchisees, even those in really difficult situations, were helping others who were worse off. I was so proud of that when they look after each other. So a lot of it's just temperament. And then the things that you're not good at. For example, I am notoriously socially unskilled. I've been divorced 3 times. That must tell you some sort of reasons about what a difficult person I am. And it was my wife's decision, not mine, basically. But 21 years really happily married now, so I finally managed to find someone who can put up with me. But I have many serious personal weaknesses that I've got to work on and challenges to meet all the time. How can I improve? How can I do better?
Hey, Tradies in Business was here. Sorry to interrupt your listening pleasure. I'm joined by Coxie, of course.
Hello.
You may not know this, tradie or tradie wife or whoever you are listening to this program, but we're business coaches. Oh my gosh, that feels weird to say. But we do actually work with people just like you to solve a bunch of problems. And we have this fantastic program called the Tradiepreneur Program, and that's how we do it. And we do it with a wonderful community of trade business owners who are all trying to fix or improve or change things to progress. Things like getting behind on quoting, Coxie.
Feeling overwhelmed, behind on your invoicing, feeling really stressed or frustrated about the money stuff. Sometimes you can pay the bills, sometimes you can't. What about staff? Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my gosh, staff.
Trying to get them to do what you want them to do, if you can even find them in the first place. There's so many struggles.
And we've seen clients tackle these things in their trade businesses in quite a short space of time, to be honest, during the program, and recruit staff at a time where everybody was saying you can't get good staff, improve their quality from their team, collect their debts much more quickly. We have sessions.
Getting tips?
Yes. Getting tips, yes. So people rounding up, customers rounding up the invoice by hundreds of dollars because they're so happy with the sales process and the experience of dealing with the trade business owner and their team. So some amazing stories from our clients. But, you know, as they say in the commercials, don't take it from us. Hear what some of our clients have to say.
Coming into Christmas, we are not worried about money. We've got enough money in the bank to pay everybody's leave. There's work booked in for the new year. And for the first time in a long time, we'll be having 3 weeks off and not worrying about the business. That's probably the biggest win of all.
Using the cash flow forecast, I've been able to look into the future and see where I'm going to be situated financially. And it's actually started to have a huge bearing on whether or not I make purchases.
By far, one of the best things about working with Nick and Woz are the other businesses that are working alongside them. It is amazing how empowering it is to be working alongside like-minded people who have similar goals, similar troubles. We can all relate to each other, and everybody helps everybody out by figuring out problems with you that they may have faced previously. Everybody has solutions and constructive feedback, and it's an incredibly friendly, warm, welcoming environment, not threatening at all.
From every job, I know that I will get a sustainable wage that's industry leading. I can have at least 10 to 20% profit, and I can pay taxes, super, all of that, and I do not have to question whether or not I can because of the way that it's been built, and that is thanks to Traders in Business and what they've taught me and what I've learned.
So there you go. There's some real people. We did not pay them to say those things. And I think that sounds a lot better than Coxie and I reading them out. We really would love for you to check out more about how you could take your trade business to where you would like it to be. Surely you have a vision of what things could be like or what you wish they were like on a day-to-day basis, whether that is reducing stress or actually making more money. Maybe it's spending more time with the family, taking more holidays, having the choice that you really wanted when you started your business, instead of this beast that seems to be there for many of you listening to this program. So if you want to find out more about how we do this through the Tradiepreneur program, Coxie's going to tell you all about it.
I'm actually not. I'm going to be really secretive and keep all of our magic up our sleeves. What I would like you to do, though, is head on over to tradiesandbusiness.com.au and you can learn all about us, why we do what we do, and how you can work with us, what that actually looks like. There's a whole bunch of free stuff there for you to download, lots of options. We've always got new stuff going up onto the website, and a great place for you to learn a whole bunch more about how you can work with us. You can even book a 15-minute chat.
For free.
For free.
That's how abundant we are. So head over to the website, check it out, book a chat with us, and we'd love to find out if you'd be a great fit for the Tradiepreneur community and start hanging out with some of those people that you just heard from. How do you enroll the support of those around you in that, Jim?
Well, I'm very passionate about what I do. I mean, I guess that tends to rub off on people. People tend to look at you and pick up your attitudes. And if you're in the kind of thing that says, only my money is important, well, that'll come about. But I think most people in gyms share that kind of mission attitude. We're there for a purpose. We're there to help other people. That's our primary objective. And you show by your actions as well as what you say that people matter. Like, for example, there was a case recently, I'm talking about franchising with Gardner Homes, where the master franchisees got to the end of their term and the franchisor wants to step in and take their business from them, and they're fighting a legal case. Now, that to me seems incredibly insane. I mean, it's just so grossly unfair. Nobody in gyms would ever dream of doing a thing like that. If we terminate a franchisor or a franchisee, or particularly a franchisor, because their business is worth a lot of money, they always give them a chance to sell. I mean, it's not even in the contract, but though actually I'm writing it in because I think it should be there. But why would you even think of doing something different? So when you act in a certain way, when you always show by your attitude and by your passion that something's important, people will tend to catch up on that. And also the people that are drawn to you are the people believe. I have a book called Every Customer a Fan, which we give out quite freely. It's all over the place. We just give away copies to everybody who wants it, because it's a statement of my history and what we did and why we did it. And it's just interesting. Many years ago, a lady called Sharon she was a hospital administrator, and she was thinking of buying a cleaning franchise. And but then she thought, well, hang on a bit. I'm an administrator with a white collar job. Why would I be a cleaner? Because that's kind of like going down in a sense. And then somebody gave her a copy of my book, and she read it. She said, I like that attitude, that guy's attitude. She never met me at the time. I said, I like the attitude. So she bought a franchise. A few months later, she bought the master franchise. Then she became an incredibly successful franchisor. She's now running the dog wash division, and she's a wonderful, wonderful lady. But the thing about Sharon is she really, really cares. She's got the biggest heart you could imagine. But she was drawn. And I often say, if every book we ever got printed just bought as Sharon Connell, it'd be worth it. She was attracted to the culture of the company. And I think to a certain extent, you indoctrinate people. We call it gymifying them. They come to training, they become gymified. But it's also because you try to attract the kind of people that really believe in what you believe. This is a mission-oriented company. We're not in it to make money for Jim. We're in it because we care about our people.
Yeah.
And Jim does all right. I'm not poor, but it's never the top priority.
There's a lot of books in that bookcase behind you for our listeners on the podcast. Jim has an impressive library behind him. So books aren't cheap these days, mate.
No.
Well, I would probably read or listen to 2 to 3 books a week, as well as other things as well. I'm a massive inveterate reader, book listener. It's great. I'm just finished reading a book called Boys and Men, talking about the problems men have in the modern world and so forth. I love learning and listening. It's fun. It's great.
Actually, something we've been talking about quite a bit also is that curious mind and maintaining a curious mind, Jim, and how beneficial that can be, not only to you personally with your satisfaction levels and your personal growth, etc., but also to your business and the business journey, to improving culture within your team, to improving outcomes for clients, etc. Do you think that that's something that you foster within the group is that curious mind?
Well, I try to, but sometimes I'll read a book that I love and I'll buy several copies and I'll give them to my key staff to say, read it, spread it around. So somebody just rolls up his eyes and just says, Jim, I haven't even finished the last one you gave me yet. I'm notorious for talking about books all the time, but it's good. Look, 90% of what I read isn't particularly about business. It's I read anything about business that I can get my hands on, but I read everything: psychology, about economics, about politics, about science, about all kinds of things. So it's just, but it is helpful, actually. I mean, I'm always coming across situations where something that I've read, registers in some sort of way, and you just keep on getting better. I mean, people are supposed to get static as they go on. I'm 70 years old, and I've changed my mind about so many things over the last 10 years. Some of my kids can't believe it. One of my daughters was just, I told her something, and she said, I had no idea you thought that now.
That's fantastic.
It happened in that case. I came to agree with what her position was, but it was just she just didn't know. But I'd been reading things, and I just looked at it a different way. My mind is changing a lot.
Yes, commitment to learning is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that's key for leaders in any station. Whether we're the leader within our family or our business or our team or leading our customers, our social groups. I think great leaders are pliable. They're always, as you're doing, Jim, looking at other ways, different opinions, considering all the different arguments for anything in life, and thinking critically and making decisions based on what makes sense at the time. I mean, new information's coming to light all the time. You've been in business since the 70s.
There's a wonderful study done by started at Harvard University in the 1930s. It's been going for 8 decades, looking at people and how one of the things they were very interested in is what makes decides people to be either happy and well or sad and sick in later life. And they found there were 7 major characteristics. One of them was not smoking, not drinking to excess, proper weight, exercise. There was and the having an active mind was huge, was really, really important. Continuous learning and so forth. The biggest one of all was relationships. That was the number one, but all those other things matter. But having a curious, active mind makes a difference. And this idea that when you get older, you have to be conservative and set in your ways is I don't understand it. I'm always, a lot of my ideas are pretty loony, I must say, but I'm always coming up with ideas. Some of them actually work out. So you've got to keep on learning and never. I don't believe in retirement, I must say. I mean, my life expectancy, because I'm in perfect health and everything else, is probably another 20, 25 years, and I've got a lot to do in that period of time. So you can't afford to just stay stuck. No. Got to move.
Was going to be my next question, actually, was about retirement, because I can't see a time in my life where I want to retire from what I'm doing. I don't know what I'll be doing in 20, 30 years. I'm not sure if I'll be working with Warwick, but we'll see how we go.
You might have had your fill of me.
I might have been.
Nicole, let me tell you something. You don't retire because you get old. You get old because you retire.
I 100% agree with you. And you see it demonstrated time and time again.
Yeah.
So my question was about maintaining that curious mind, the physical activity, etc. What does the next 10, 15 years look like for you, Jim?
Well, it's exciting. I feel I'm just getting started. Look, it's taken me a while because I'm a very dense sort of person, but I'm starting to figure out eventually how to run a business properly.
I think you're doing a good job, Jim.
Well, I can do a lot better.
Yeah,
I make mistakes. I mean, some of the things that I look back on what I did 2 years ago, and I think, wow, what a fool.
Yeah.
How could I have been so mistaken about what I did? We've made terrible, terrible problems, terrible mistakes that we hopefully learn not to make now. So, I mean, it's amazing. Look, this coming year, 2023, is going to be so exciting. We're launching so many different things going on. We've got this new software coming, which I believe will be absolutely revolutionary. We've got we've become a registered training organization, which is very exciting actually, because we need to try and train and recruit people for not only as franchisees, but also to work for our franchisees because they're desperate for trained workers. We're looking at ways of getting people coming from overseas, good people coming from overseas. There's fantastic opportunity in places like India and South Africa, people who would make great franchisees. How do we get them in? What courses can we offer? What offers? How can we do that? There is just so many brilliant things that we can do. And I've got a scientific research project going that is starting to produce some really fascinating results. We're looking at ways of, curing people from things like drug addiction and so forth, which I think has fantastic potential. I just hired a new head who's starting the 1st of February. So that's where my money tends to go, what comes out of the business. So it's just immensely exciting. It's fantastically fun. And I've just had my first couple of grandsons, my children. I've got 10 children, but they're very slow breeders. But my first 2 grandsons, I spent spending time with them, and that's really exciting too. I love that. And as my children start to catch up with their father and start to have a few kids of their own, that's really, there's so many amazing things happening.
I love your enthusiasm. It's we're really blessed to be here, and we're blessed there are always positive opportunities in front of all of us, even in some of our darkest times. There is still always a positive light, and it's lovely to hear from someone who you exude that positivity, Jim. You're very enthusiastic, very easy to listen to, and I think it's really refreshing. Particularly through what's been a few trying years in business. They haven't been the easiest of years, and I'm sure that there's still some to come. To hear that business leaders are still looking for that positivity, a nice way forward, and to continue to develop what's possible.
The opportunities are extraordinary, Nicole. They really are. This is something that frustrates me a lot. People have this kind of fixed idea. You have to go to school and just do well, and you have to go to university, and you have to get a professional qualification. That's the only way to succeed. And one of our top guys, a guy called Dan Carl, he was a high school dropout. This guy's a failure. This is the bloke that society writes up. You say, you're rubbish. You're nothing. Went out, got a job, worked at McDonald's, did well there, bought a franchise. He's by second or third year was turning over just under $1 million a year. Not only that, but with a 5.0 star rating too, which was really
wow.
Now he's sold that. He's become one of our most successful franchisors. This guy's like 26. Okay.
Wow.
The opportunities for people with raw talent and drive and ability. You don't have to be a brain. You just have to have somebody who cares about what you do and looks at it and says, how can I do it better? The opportunities are extraordinary. And this is why this book of Boys and Men was so interesting, is that we do have this one there's one way of doing things. It has to be through formal education. It doesn't suit everybody. Some people are just not suited. I have a friend who's now a very successful church pastor who dropped out of school at the age of 15 and became an apprentice, and then he did all kinds of things. He's just an amazing guy. He just wasn't suited to school. There's got to be other avenues, which is why I think your program is fantastic. If it can encourage people to look at these kinds of avenues, because seriously, the average Australian income is about 75 grand a year. Now, the great majority of our franchisees make more than that. This is people who mow lawns and clean houses and so forth. Yeah. Our turnover, we did a survey recently, average was about $2,900 per week, which amounts to something over 100 grand income per annum net terms. Now, that's somebody who's doing jobs that society might look down and despise and say, hey, you're just a cleaner, you're just a gardener, you're just a pest controller. You're not doing something important like, financial, being a lawyer or something like that. And you can argue which is more important for society, and I don't think I'd necessarily say lawyers are we need more of. But
you won't get any disagreement here, Jim.
There's some very, very good people around. There's some great, honest,
absolutely in every
lawyers. I happen to employ one, a guy called Andy. He's a fantastic guy. But just some real scumbags in that profession.
Oh, yeah. I have to be honest, my cleaner is probably the most important person in our family. I could not live without her. She does a fantastic job of helping our family function. This stuff is so integral to my quality of life. So I'm certainly not a subscriber of looking down on anyone, actually. full stop. However, I understand what you're saying, and I believe that that's been a connotation for many years. I do see that changing, though, of recent times. I see a lot more respect being given for the outcome that these people create. My quality of life would be very vastly different if I did not have some of the assistance I have, from our gardener to the cleaner to the people that come and do the cars. Without them, I can't function well enough to do what I do on a daily basis. So,
absolutely. They're a really crucial part. A lot of people can't do these things for themselves. It's very important to have somebody who does the job well, who's professional, who's organized, on time, who's honest. Those things matter a lot to society, to family life. It's also good for people themselves too. I think one people don't recognize is that it's not all about money. In fact, I'm very interested in the study of money and what makes people happy. And having a higher income isn't necessarily going to make you any happier. They actually found, for example, that commuting an hour to work and back is equivalent to about a $75,000 drop in income, which is astonishing when you think about it. But when I talked to one of the things I said, I ring my veterans and ask them about what they were doing before. And sometimes they've actually been doing a lot better in terms of income. But often they're making about the same income, but they say the big difference is in the last 10 years, I've had time for my family. You know, I take my kids to school. I eat meals with them, those kind of things. And they said there's no money, there's no income that could have made up for that.
That's right.
100%.
It's interesting you mentioned that, Jim. As the year has rolled over into the new year, Nicole and I guess, have a look at what our clients have been doing over the last 12 months in our business program, and the sorts of results that they're getting, and they're coming back, setting goals and everything for 2023. And for, well, I don't understand all the reasons, but I suspect it's Nicole's and my values perhaps projecting onto our team, in inverted commas, which includes all of our clients. And a lot of them are talking about their goals and their successes and their wins, not in terms of the extra profit they've made. And some of them have made spectacular increases in their profit. But what they're actually talking about is the fact that they took 4 weeks holiday over Christmas for the first time ever in business, or, you know, they're making a commitment to pick the kids up from school twice a week. And this is the dad who's normally out on the tools, you know, busting his backside. And they're the things that people are valuing more and more is the, you know, the stuff of life. It's what life is actually all about. Sure, we need money to live in this modern world, but having all the money in the bank, as many of us, I think we know the theory, but in practice, a lot of us get swept up in the BS on social media and mainstream media around what success actually looks like. So it's fantastic to speak to a business owner such as yourself.
Well, it's the biggest mythology is that to become happy, you need to have more stuff. You need to have a better house, a bigger car, better clothes. They've actually found that there has no relationship to success. Now, money is good in some ways, for example, but it's much better spent on experiences.
Yes.
Like if you're going out with friends, this kind of thing, or going on a family trip or something, that's actually a lot more positive. The most positive thing you can do with money, strangely enough, is to give it away. Because there's something you're involved with. They say that creates more happiness.
Yes.
They actually did a little experiment, this is one of many, where they gave people some money, small amount of money, and they had 2 instructions: either spend it on yourself or spend it on somebody else. And then they looked at the results, and the people that spent it on somebody else were far happier than those who spent it on themselves, which is interesting, isn't it?
See, money can buy you happiness. You just got to give it to other people.
You just got to spend it in the right way. There was a wonderful saying that goes, "No other success can compensate for failure in the home." And I love that.
So true.
And I live by it. I take my son, he's got my 13-year-old son, my youngest son, to school every day and pick him up from school. And that's time we just talk. And during the holidays, we go out for lunch quite often.
That's nice.
And that's more valuable than anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the wonderful thing about my job is that I've always been able to do that. And I'd never, it's not worth, nothing is worth losing your family. Nothing is worth losing your best relationships too.
No, I agree.
That's right. Well, I don't think I'm going to bother asking you my usual question, Jim, which is, one piece of advice for our listeners, because you've given so many pieces of advice. I don't think we could boil it down. And again, I'm looking at all those books on your shelf and thinking, I reckon you've read every single one of them.
Well, that's true, but it's only a fraction though. It's mostly on my iPad these days, on my phone. You know, this thing here is chock full of talking books, and it's. Yeah, I don't know, but it's good. It's good. People actually, it's very accessible these days. Because one of the things, as a trader, you can do, and I would have loved to do it when I was mowing lawns, especially if we had the battery mowers in those days. Is listen to stuff all the time.
Yeah.
You're driving between jobs, you can listen to something, and
That's
you can
right.
always learn more. There's wonderful stuff around. There's podcasts like yours. Podcasts are fantastic. There's so much good stuff around that you can listen to, and sometimes it repeats itself, but then you hear a thing again and again, and suddenly it sort of sinks into this thick head and said, okay, yeah, but I do need to do this. You know, even little things. You know, one of the things I started doing recently is talking to strangers. Now, that might seem odd, but I was reading about it, and I was reading about people given this little experiment, you know, go and talk to strangers. And they all thought at the beginning that would make them feel worse, and they thought it would feel better. So just in the past few weeks, I've been trying this. So I go to the supermarket and I see somebody with a little baby, and I say, oh, you know, isn't that a beautiful baby? Or he's so angelic. So isn't that great? Just things like that. Or I was taking out ice creams, and there was a lady at the same thing. I was like, it's good stuff, isn't it? But not good for you. We just had a little laugh together. It's a funny thing. Now, that's just something I started in the first month. I've read about it. I thought I'd trial it out, and it's good. It's good. And my son, who's with me, thinks I'm pretty weird. He says, how can you do that? But it's just a good feeling. I felt good about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's thousands of little things that you see and you try. And lately I try and make more effort to make contact with people proactively instead of just waiting for them to talk to me. So I see all kinds of things, always trying new stuff, learning new things, trying new ideas, always looking and saying, how can I do this better?
Well, you're going out to thousands of ear holes, Jim, with this episode. So you'll be having an impact on many more people than just the person in the shopping centre. So hopefully we can be a part of that mission of yours, mate, to spread the knowledge. And
I love podcasts. I think they're great. I think it's great what you do. And tradies are so important. It's such an under stress. We should be proud of what we do. Absolutely. You know, during the lockdown in Victoria, it infuriated me the way that the Premier treated independent tradies as if we were just garbage. You know what he said in that I don't know if you remember in the press the press what do you call it, the event where he actually said what he said was, even though the guidelines for health and human services said sole operators can work, he got up and he said you can't get your lawns mowed or your houses cleaned. Now, what's interesting about that particular statement is not just the fact that he contradicted his own department and threw 100,000 plus Victorians out of work for what had been no good reason at all, but there's no health advice behind it. But the fact that he said you can't get your houses clean. In other words, he wasn't thinking about people who did the job because they're beneath contempt. They're just the garbage out there. I was thinking about the important people, the people who actually can afford to get the work done. Now, isn't that an appalling attitude? This is the guy who doesn't even think that the people who do the job are even human beings or worthy of consideration. That really, really got my goat, and it still makes me angry.
I can tell.
You are in good company.
I'm going to stay very quiet, Jim. Otherwise, I'll hop up on the soapbox with you, mate.
But it's good. I appreciate it too. I know a lot of people, tradies, actually come up to me and they congratulate me and thank me because I spoke for them as well.
Yes.
I mean, my people, my franchisees are my top priority. They're my tribe, my family. I am passionate about them, but also the industry as a whole. You know, we are important. We matter. What we do is worthy of respect. It's just as important as people who are financial advisors and accountants and lawyers and the rest of it. It really matters to society what we do.
And I would argue even more so, Jim. I mean, there's a slogan that was coined years ago and it still floats around: without trucks, Australia stops.
Yeah.
And I actually think we should change it to without tradies, Australia stops, because, you know, accountants aren't going to be able to go to their office and move money around and tell tax stories if the power's not working or there's no water and sanitation services or building services. I mean, the trades and the services are essential to the way we all live our lives, and yet there's still this derision of them in the media. And Nick and I get on our soapbox about this quite a lot, the tradie bashing, and I would include all of your franchisees as tradies, as trades, they're all service trades.
I'm proud of it, and I'm a tradie myself. I actually spent 10 years at university getting myself a PhD in history, but I'm a tradie. That's my business.
Yeah.
It's my livelihood, and and it matters. There is something wrong with the way we look at it. It's like there's a prejudice against people who work with their hands. I actually got calluses on my hands, and I'm proud of it because I go out gardening on my farm at the weekend and digging ditches, and I love having calloused hands. I think that's a great thing, the idea that somehow white collar work is superior. I told all my kids, actually, I said, look, if you want to go out and be a plumber or a carpenter, I would back you 100%. Now, they all went to university and stuff, and I can't get through to them, but still, it's a great career. It's a great way forward, and I am incredibly grateful for the fact that I never got a university post. My ideas were too wild and radical to have any chance of that. So I had to turn my part-time lawnmower business into something great. But what a great life that's given me!
Yes,
how much opportunities I've had. It's been absolutely wonderful.
And it's incredibly tangible. My personal belief is that those things done with our hands are so much more fulfilling from a personal point of view, in terms of what my wife as an occupational therapist would refer to as meaningful occupation. They're all things done with our hands. Yes, we're using our minds, whether it's playing a musical instrument or weaving a blanket or building a chook house or whatever our chosen meaningful occupation is. Something done with our hands is tangible, and it's very fulfilling to do that. And I think it's a fantastic occupation to be in the trades, because we can stand back and admire our work. But my past life in finance, there was very little I could stand back and admire, other than the fact that there was piles of paperwork on a desk.
It's great work. It's healthy. It gives you an opportunity to have a flexible lifestyle, which is great for family. And if you really want to be successful, I tell you what, there's a lot better opportunities in the trades. There's a wonderful book called The Millionaire Next Door, which is about Americans and looking at what the typical American millionaire is. And they are not a lawyer or a doctor or a financial advisor. They're especially tradies. They're people like me with fairly base. They were describing one situation where they had a meal set out for these millionaires, and there was all this caviar and rich food and everything else. And this guy didn't want it. They just wanted beer and the hamburger and stuff.
Barbecue.
But it was the journalists that ate all the fancy food, because that was their kind of thing. But the people who were tradies, who come up from nothing, who learned, and actually often have very simple tastes. Because that's one thing about me. This last 3 months ago was the first time in my life I ever bought a new car, because I wanted an electric one, and it was safer. And I really believe in that kind of stuff. But I've always had old cars. I buy my clothes from Kmart and wear them until they got holes in them. If I go out, I love going to a local pizza joint. I mean, I just like a normal lifestyle. Yeah. And I having huge amounts of money in that posh, upper crusty, I don't like it. It's not good. There is the everyday life of an Australian, and I think tradies have got that in spades. It's a fantastic way to make a living and making a future. And I wish more of our young people, especially the kids, the boys, would look at this and say, "Hey, there's a real potential in this. I can be something great. I can be a great father. I can have time with my kids. I can provide a good livelihood for me, and I can succeed, and I can do whatever I want to, like Dan Carl. And I can do so much if I want to." All right, like one of my favorite franchisees is a guy. He works 3 days a week. He's a mowing guy in Adelaide. Works 3 days a week. You know what he does with the rest of his time? He goes out and spends time with the homeless.
Wow.
He goes out and just talks to them and finds out what they need, and just listens to them, and then sees what help he can give them. Isn't that a brilliant lifestyle?
Yes.
What a fantastic thing. He couldn't do that if he was working 5 days a week for some corporate soulless giant, could he?
No.
He does it because he's got his own business and he can put his resources where he wishes to. And also the other thing too is great, when you're in the trades, they can't make you retire at 65.
They cannot.
You've got your own business. Who's going to fire me? I mean, some people might like to, but honestly, in my business, they can't do it. And I'm going to work until I drop. probably in my 90s, okay, because it's my own business. That's the great power of the trades. What can you offer that? My mother was a school teacher and they forced her out at 65 just because she worked for the government. But you can't do that to a tradie.
No.
Jim, I could listen to you and your opinions all day, I reckon, but I'm sure you've got plenty to do as well.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I love talking about it. It's really fun. And
have you got any final thoughts you'd like to share with our independent trade business owners that listen to these episodes every week?
Well, people, I just take my hat off to you. I really respect what you do. It's not easy to get going. It isn't. But what you're doing is a fantastic thing. And if you succeed, you are great. You're great people. You've really done something extraordinary. And I have to say, if you ever decide to make it easy and come across to Jim's, I'll do everything I can to give you a free franchise.
I love that.
But we'd love to have you with us. But God bless you. And
pre-educated,
all the
Jim.
best of success.
That's wonderful. I love that. Jim, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. Very grateful.
You've been listening to the Tradies in Business podcast with Warwick Bidwell and Nicole Cox. Find out more about today's guest, tools for your trade business and other cool stuff at tradiesinbusiness.com.au.